wonderful A-plusers out there. It is I, Stuart, here once again to give you guys another Stargirl review. This time we're going to be talking about season number 2, episode number 9, Summer School Chapter 9, of course. Still going with the Summer School titling for the season, of course. But yeah, guys, what we got here is a really, again, much like the last couple of episodes, another really dark episode, but again, you know, still a really well-written episode while at that. Before I do begin, though, I do want to mention that I am sorry for getting this review up as late as it was. I was actually really hoping I could get this review up like earlier than my normal reviews. I was actually planning on reviewing this episode last night when it aired, but you know, for me, when I get my footage and when, you know, I actually just watch these shows in general, since I don't have cable, I always do it through the CW app, and for some very annoying and strange reason, the episode did not go up on the CW app on time like it normally does. It actually, like, I was up until like I want to say 2 o'clock in the morning and it still wasn't up. So at that point I just kind of gave up on it and figured, screw it, I'm just gonna sleep instead. So unfortunately I didn't get this review out on time like I wanted to, and if anything, I think I kind of shot myself in the foot, because by staying up that late I actually was unable to get up early enough to like actually be able to do a solid review of it. So yeah, it's one of those things where I don't mean to sound lazy when I say this, but you know, it's just that I'm a dude that needs a good night's sleep if I'm going to do a full-on video review of something. I can't really do it when I'm super tired, else it's going to be like incredibly half-assed and just not as good, and there's going to be, you know, things that I miss about it. So unfortunately I had to you know, wait until a little bit towards the early afternoon before I could actually get into this review. But that all being said, I finally saw the episode and I absolutely loved it, so I'm excited to talk about it with you guys here on this video. So let's get started with the beginning part of the episode, because basically a storm is hitting Blue Valley, and of course the main assumption is that the storm is being caused by Eclipso, which of course, you know, makes the most sense. Now that he's free, it's completely screwing with the weather patterns, and it's why Blue Valley specifically is dealing with these storms, right? Well, maybe not. What I kind of like about these last few episodes is they know that there's the uncertainty of what you see, whether or not it's real or fake, and I like how the show really likes to play with that, because even though we as the audience kind of know that a lot of this stuff is all illusions, all stuff that Eclipso is making people think that they see, and to an extent it's kind of the same way with some of the main characters, you can't help but, like, you know, still have that uncertainty, you know, during some of the scenes, especially when a lot of Eclipso's visions are aware that you're aware that you believe it's a vision by Eclipso. And that's kind of what he plays on with Barbara, because we see her driving home in the storm, and then her car suddenly stops, and in the back of her seat, that's when we do see Jordan McKent in the back of her seat, like he's still alive. And you know, the funny thing is about it too is that everything he's saying is making a lot of sense. The idea of his metahuman powers being what, you know, kept him alive, that he never actually died after he got hit by that truck, and you know, now he's going to take his revenge out on her and on her family as well. And when we cut to the family, you know, we see that Mike is seeing Cameron the entire time, and what's really funny about like this is that despite the fact that they're both like not even in the same, you know, area, you got Barbara in her car like on the highway, you got Mike at home, you know, by himself. You have the fact that Cameron, when he comes to Mike's house, you know, and it gets revealed that Cameron knows that Mike killed his father, he then tries to, you know, he tells Mike after that his dad is going to kill his mother. And it's just really interesting how their stories kind of align, the idea that the two of them are the ones creating the storm and not Eclipso. And so it actually kind of makes you as an audience member, along with our characters, kind of question, wait a minute, is this real? Like for me personally, I don't think I was fooled at all, like, you know, not even for a moment. I think like the entire time for me, I definitely knew it had to be Eclipso. But at the same time, you know, I'm looking at it through the vision of someone watching it, but you're thinking about the main characters in the episodes, and you're like, yeah, if I was them and I was seeing something that they were seeing as clearly, and to an extent being able to feel what it is that they're feeling, you know, it totally makes sense that even though they know what Eclipso can do, they would still have that major uncertainty. And I like how in the episode, you know, even Eclipso just kind of knows exactly what to say to them to get them like to basically kind of not necessarily drop their guard, but essentially kind of just believe that, you know, what they're seeing is fully real. He knows exactly what it is that he needs to say in order to get them to believe that. So both of them at different points actually do think that they're about to get killed by the people that they're seeing, you know, because I guess Eclipso's visions are just that real that you can actually feel what they're doing to you, and if you can't break out of that, that's what it is that's going to kill you. Something that if you can't break out of his mental games, it can definitely tear you apart on the inside, like we've seen him do with others. So I thought it was really cool though with Barbra, because you know we see Mike get rescued by Courtney, and what has to rescue Barbra, it ends up being the Shade, and we do see that he is definitely still alive, but he, much like what we saw earlier in his previous episode, he's still having trouble maintaining like a physical form. So the only thing he can really do for Barbra is kind of whisper in her ear, remind her that everything she's seeing isn't real, and telling her to kind of start the engine, which we see her trying to do, and seeing that it didn't work, but he's like telling her that she hasn't actually tried to start it, that she needs to try it again, but you know, really try and start it, and it actually ends up working, and that's what ends up breaking her out of you know, the vision essentially. And then when we cut back to the house, you know, we end up seeing that it's Courtney that ends up rescuing Mike. Once again, we kind of see with the staff, that's the one area that Eclipso can't really break through, is when it comes to the cosmic staff. That seems to be the only power that can really fight off Eclipso. And speaking of the staff, you know, it does look like a lot of the staff's power has come back, so it is one of those things where we know it can work against Eclipso, but we know that they can't just rely on it, because if they do, it'll end up using up all its power again, and then Eclipso will just be out there on the loose again, being unable to be stopped. So those were kind of like the two B and C plots of the storyline, but the main plot really goes to Pat Dugan, as we see him not only like kind of being forced to like look at flowers that remind him of the funeral of Dr. Midnight's daughter, but we also see him staring at a coffin like in the middle of his house that also has Dr. Midnight's daughter in it as well. And something I did not point out in the previous episode, but the dead body that we saw in the lake, that of course turned out to be an illusion, was also the same girl, which I actually did not realize it watching it before, but now, you know, watching it here in the episode, I'm like, oh yeah, now I remember. It's the same girl that we saw, you know, Dr. Midnight's daughter, like at the very first in the very first episode from Bruce Gordon, when Bruce Gordon, or I guess more Eclipso, but as Bruce Gordon kind of ended up killing her in the very first episode. So yeah, we end up having these flashbacks, and we get a flashback of the funeral where we have the JSA all like kind of wondering what they should do about the situation, because Eclipso has you know, too much power and they just don't know how to fight against it. And here's where we get our guest star for the episode that I was really, I mean, technically there's a lot of guest stars in this episode, because you got all the JSA members played by pretty big actors, in fact, but one of those of course being Jay Garrett himself from the Flash universe. Something I thought was actually done pretty well in this episode, and one thing I kind of figured was going to happen, but I thought was actually done pretty well, is they do leave it very ambiguous as to how he ends up crossing over to Earth 1. Like, we still don't have an explanation of how he ends up going there from either Stargirl or from the Flash, which I'm totally fine with personally. You know, it's a lot better than them trying to come up with their own explanation and then having it just not fit into the Flash at all, or, you know, same vice versa, the Flash trying to have their own explanation but then having it contradict Stargirl. I think both of them kind of playing it like very vaguely and like not actually having an explanation is probably the best way to do it. The next flashback that we get after that though ends up being the big meeting that really changes everything kind of going forward for the JSA, and it really puts them at where they were at the very beginning of the series, really, when we saw them getting their asses kicked by the ISA. It's debatably this moment that really changed the JSA forever, but then you also got to look at what if they didn't do it, you know, would the JSA have even been around? But that is the fact that the Shade tells Starman that the only way they can put a stop to Eclipso is to kill the host, which in this case the host is Bruce Gordon. Now the big thing that actually makes this a tough decision for them is that, yeah, on the one hand, Bruce Gordon is a victim, and, you know, it's like the way Pat puts it, I thought was actually kind of brilliant. You know, we're victimizing a victim if we do this, but, you know, at the same time, they look at how powerful Eclipso is, and the fact that they do a bunch of name drops, and these name drops are huge, right? So they mentioned Dr. Fate and Spectre, both the Hawks and Green Lantern, and they mention that Eclipso has killed every single one of them. So we know that this Eclipso is nothing to mess around with. I mean, like, these are big characters. I mean, Dr. Fate and Spectre on their own are like two of the most powerful characters within the DC universe. And apparently Eclipso has actually killed both of them. So, you know, it makes total sense why this would be the point where the JSA would actually think that we might have to cross a line here, because at this point, you know, when you have a villain like that who's able to take down heroes of this cosmic kind of level, and then you have him threatening your families, you really can't blame the JSA for wanting to take that extreme step forward. So you have that moment where the JSA group up with Pat because they need a odd vote just in case, or they need an odd number of people just in case their vote ends up being a tie. And the vote is basically whether or not they should go forward with killing Bruce Gordon. And of course, we know that Pat and Jay Garrett are fully against it. But then when we get to Wildcat and Hourman, you know, both of them with families of their own, they both agree that, you know, it's probably the only way to make sure that they're safe. And then, you know, we cut to Starman, and here's what when we get something kind of interesting out of him is that we do find out that Starman himself does have a family. We still don't know anything about who this family is, and I don't think they're gonna do some like 180 on us and be like, oh, Starman was Courtney's father all along. I really don't think that's gonna happen. But we do find, you know, we do know that Starman, you know, has a family which he reveals right then and there, and he says that, you know, he'll do anything to protect them. So he ends up, you know, voting for killing Bruce Gordon in the end. And you have Pat, who essentially doesn't want any part of this. And I actually thought this was going to be like Pat leaving the JSA and then maybe kind of coming back like during the events of the very first episode with the flashback. But you kind of have Starman almost like borderline bullying Pat into being the one to drive him so he can get the job done. And, you know, it's one of those things where I thought it was going to like lead to kind of the JSA then happen to vote on who actually does it, but you have Starman volunteering right away to do so, but also kind of forcing Pat to volunteer as well, even though Pat was the one who voted against it. And yeah, what we got next though is, you know, obviously it's one of those things where I feel like not showing the action of it ended up making the scene that much more powerful, because rather than us seeing Starman kill Bruce Gordon, we see Starman, you know, meeting Pat outside in his car, and we see him coming into the car with the actual diamond in a box. Essentially, as long as no one touches the diamond directly, Eclipso can't actually take control of you. So the best way to have it to like, you know, keep him at bay is to hold him, keep him in the box and keep him stored. Now, of course, the one thing I do kind of, you know, kind of have to take the shade side on is why didn't they just like throw that thing in the middle of the ocean and like, you know, put a bunch of rocks in it where no one would ever find it again. But, you know, I mean, maybe you could say that what if like something in the bottom of the ocean ended up hitting the rock and the rock got loose and then, you know, washed up on shore. But I don't know. To me, a storage unit in a very small town doesn't seem like the most secure place to keep a monstrous villain like Eclipso, as we, you know, see throughout the events of this season. That probably wasn't the safest place to keep him. But yeah, that was essentially their plan, was to just keep him in a storage unit. And we do see that killing him, though, was kind of the main thing that ended up separating the JSA. Now, something we didn't know about, in fact, when looking at season 1, because we think, as far as we know in season 1, the JSA were all still together throughout like their entire history. Like, we thought that the thing that actually tore them apart was the fact that the ISA killed all of them. But we find out, like, you know, debatably, the way Pat looks at it is that he thinks that the moment that they decided to kill Starman, that was the moment where the JSA like officially kind of died, essentially, after that point, because no one was ever the same afterwards. The JSA stopped meeting together, stopped trying to be a superhero team, and the only thing that really brought them back together was the fact that the ISA reassembled. And so they, you know, joined together again to fight the ISA. But unfortunately, with the ISA actually working as a team and the JSA being too broken to work as a team, that ended up being kind of the, you know, final nail in the coffin for the JSA. So that ended up being why the ISA supposedly won at the end. And we get to the very end where Courtney ends up rescuing Pat using the cosmic staff, and this is where Pat ends up revealing the truth to Courtney, the fact that, you know, the only way to kill Eclipso back then was to kill the host. And now that Eclipso doesn't have a host, he's just straight up not sure how it is that they're going to be able to kill him. And, you know, Courtney takes this news about as well as you would expect. She isn't very happy about this. So we end up getting her, you know, really pissed off at him. And it's not helped by her next, the next line of dialogue, which is Pat, or her telling Pat, you know, what's mom going to think when she finds out about this? And then Pat, of course, reveals to her that she's actually known about it the entire time. So when her mother comes home immediately afterwards, we get this really sad, you know, kind of zoom out shot. And I gotta give some props to the sound design for this scene, because we see the camera like slowly zooming out, and what was interesting is that it seems like they didn't like actually use any boom mics or any lob mics or anything for this moment. It felt like what they did is they used like a shotgun mic maybe on the camera, so as it was like zooming out, you would get like, it would feel like less like you were part of the scene and more like you were kind of hearing an argument coming from outside of a house, like as you were passing by it. And so you don't hear everything that, you know, she says, but you know, it's clear that she's really angry at both her mother and Pat, you know, for keeping this major secret from her this whole time. And as we zoom all the way out, we then see Eclipso as the young Bruce Gordon, and he smiles knowing that he's actually gotten away with his plan. And you know, and that's what's tragic about the whole thing, is that even though he wasn't able to get to Courtney because of her having the cosmic staff, he was still able to break Courtney by breaking the people around her and forcing them kind of, with Pat specifically, forcing him to kind of tell her the truth. And again, it kind of goes down to Eclipso just knowing exactly what to say, exactly how to manipulate people, and exactly how to break them. And you know, so far we've only seen that Beth is the only one who has yet to be actually broken by Eclipso. But even then, you know, as it's mentioned in the episode, we know that she's at the very least traumatized by the whole thing. Even with Mike, you know, when you have Eclipso as Cameron basically blaming him for his father's death, you even have him mentioning something about his mom, which we've actually never heard too much of. And in fact, it actually kind of makes me re-look at this other scene that we saw back in episode 1, I believe it was, in a very different light. Basically when we had Starman with Pat Dugan's ex-wife, and Starman was trying to find out where it is that Pat Dugan was, we see that Starman's kind of being a dick to her in that first episode, giving you the impression that this version of Starman, if it is the Starman from the past, he's kind of an asshole. But then we kind of like get a new perspective of it with this episode when you see Mike and he looks at it as his mom just like left them. And you know, we don't know if she left because of Pat being involved with the JSA, or if she left just because she was an asshole. But the way that Mike sees it is that his mom just straight up abandoned both of them. And that's another thing that Eclipso knows how to play on. He knows how to get to Mike, and we also kind of see that that's why he really wants to be part of the JSA. That's why he doesn't want to feel rejected by the JSA, because in a way being rejected by the JSA makes him feel very similar to how he felt when his mom kind of left him, as he felt very rejected by his own mother. So, you know, again, going back to Eclipso, with him being able to get like directly into your head and say all the right things, even when you know a lot of it isn't real and you know that this is exactly what he's trying to do, it's still like such a challenging force to really fight against. You know, and bravo for the writers, because I think that Eclipso might actually be like the most evil thing I think I've ever seen within the Arrowverse, that is. He's definitely like one of the most terrifying villains out there on cable network television, and I just think the way they've been writing him, you know, not only is he amazingly terrifying in the way he's directed, but he's just very terrifying in just the writing of his character. Yeah, I really can't praise this show enough, and I feel like I say that every week when I'm reviewing the show. But yeah, it's again another fantastic episode, and with only a few more episodes left, and now like Eclipso being kind of at his peak at this point, because now he's fully broken the JSA. Like, there really isn't much of a JSA anymore. You know, you have Courtney and Beth probably still going after Eclipso, but even then, like, what really can they do? Because the cosmic staff can weaken him, but it can't completely destroy him. And then the goggles, yeah, they can see through his visions, but you know, that's about it. Like, he still does have power like over the two of them. So really curious to see how they wrap this story up going forward. But guys, of course, as we always say here, at the end of the day, these are just my A+ opinions. We here at A+ Opinions always want to know what you guys think, so definitely let me know what you thought of the episode in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, but of course guys, above all, don't forget to keep it A+. I'll talk to you all later. Goodbye.
If you enjoy our content and want to be a part of helping our channel grow, become a patron supporter. We have affordable tiers to choose from that offer a variety of exclusive and early access content, from audio files for all of our shows for you to enjoy on the road, access to our Discord community, and plenty of reactions, reviews, character breakdowns, and more. Check us out at patreon.com/A+opinions. And as always, remember, like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification so anytime we drop a brand new video, you will be notified.